New Year's and welcome to Counseling Connections. I am Tinger.
And I'm Stanley.
And we are here to bring you good news for the new year. So today we're going to be talking about how to start and maintain a great year. We're hoping that through our podcast today that we will be able to provide you with some relevant, real, and reliable strategies that will help you in the coming new year. We know this is the month that we usually make all kinds of resolutions. So we're hoping that you really keep in mind that your total health is not only your physical health. We usually make a lot of physical goals, but we want today to provide you with some strategies, not only for your physical health, but for your emotional and mental health as well. They all work in combination together for you to be a well-rounded person. So we want to talk about the whole notion around New Year's resolutions. So I have provided for you the definition because we often want to know what's the purpose behind the New Year's resolution, because most people only are able to stand by their goals, their resolutions, for a month or less. So let's look at that definition of what a resolution is. It's a tradition in which a person resolves to continue good practices. So you want to continue those good things that you started last year. Change an undesirable trait or behavior. Get rid of those things that were not working for you last year. But a lot of times we drag those things into the new year, even though they did not work last year. And also to accomplish a personal goal or otherwise improve their life at the start of the new year. So this is the month in which we start anew again. So hopefully we will be able to help you with some strategies of how you can become fit in this new year.
Okay, so Tinger just gave us a definition that we're going to use as we often do, so we're all on the same page. And she talked about New Year's resolutions. And we know you can start anew at any time. You don't necessarily have to wait until January, but because this is being shown in January and it is the beginning of a new year, 2022, we thought, well, why not start now? For those of you who have not started prior to looking at this podcast or listening to this podcast, today is a very good time to start. So she had given you a definition of a New Year's resolution and how we're going to shape our podcast today. So we're talking about becoming fit, ways we can become fit for the new year. So we're going to start with, as it clearly shows on if you're able to view the podcast, it says a new year, a new you. So that doesn't mean you just a 180, just become a totally new person. But there are things in which we all can improve upon, as she alluded to just a few moments ago, things we can all look at and say we can do better, or we can, in areas we can be better. So we want to first reflect on the past year, reflect on that past year, and look at what went well and what didn't go well. So that's as important as well. So don't just think about all the things that just didn't happen last year. And, I'm just going to do it. Didn't happen. That didn't happen. I'm going to make this happen this year. Look at what went well and build upon what went well and keep that. But the things that didn't go well, you can just kind of discard those things and say that I learned from them. Therefore, in my new year and part of my resolution, I'm going to take those experiences and build upon that and say it wasn't for naught because I actually learned something from it in order to make my new year better. Okay. Also, in order to make this new you happen in terms of your resolutions, we want you to think about as well. She talked about being fit. And I want to also talk a little bit about your mental fitness, as she talked about just a few seconds ago. She said we're going to address having a mental toughness, because she said to start it off with, resolutions generally last a month and a half. And most of us who are listening to this, if we're adults for sure, we can relate. We start off energetic, gun ho. We're going to make this happen. This is the year. And just a little side note: January is the time of year that fitness gyms tend to take in the most money, because people will start a membership in January and then they tend to, by the side, kind of let it go. So a lot of people are gun ho, but we want you to also mentally talk a little bit about your mental toughness. In order to achieve that goal, that resolution, and be able to check that box, having a mental toughness, because a mental toughness is when you feel like I just can't do it, something inside you, it will push you forward. It will propel you to go forward, even when you don't want to. In order to reach that resolution's goal, you got to have a mental toughness. It's usually those when they're just not very tough mentally, that they just see obstacles and they just stop and give up. They just give up. But having a mental toughness to say, I don't feel like it, I don't really want to do it, but something inside says, you can do it. And you can then begin to focus upon the goal that lies ahead. Remember your resolution. Also, self-love. Self-love is important, because when you realize that sometimes I feel like I'm on an island by myself, or no one else seems to be buying into my resolution, into what I want to do, sometimes you feel like it's just me. But you got to understand, if you love yourself, if no one else does, that's powerful, because that self-love will, once again, we're not saying that we want you to be arrogant. We're not saying that, we want you to be just totally self-absorbed, but to love oneself says sometimes when I can't do it with the support of others, I can still do it. I can still make this happen, even if I don't feel like I'm getting the support that I need. I love myself enough that I'm going to continue to fight for my resolution. Discipline. We all can relate to that. That's biggie. That's a biggie, whether it's mental, physical, or professionally, whatever it may be. Discipline is so important. Having a discipline. People kind of talk about planners. Planners get a bad rap. They get a bad name. They say, oh, God, you got to plan this, you got to plan that. But oftentimes people who plan have discipline, because they stick to that plan that says, if I can see this, and I recommend that for your New Year's resolution, whatever it may be that you're trying to achieve, whether it's something like physical, weight loss, or professionally, or whatever, devise a plan. Come up with a plan. Then once you come up with the plan and you can put it on paper, you can visualize it and then put it on paper. Oftentimes those people are able more often they're more often able to achieve it by being able to say, I can check that box, and they see progress. But having discipline to do it when you don't feel like it is extremely important, no matter what it is. We look oftentimes at people who do achieve goals, and especially weight loss goals. Those people were very disciplined in terms of their diet choices, in terms of their exercising. They had a lot of discipline to get to be the person that they have become, whether it's professionally. You see people who have climbed the corporate ladder, if that's so what you choose, and they had to make a lot of sacrifices, as well as that discipline. They had to make sacrifices in order to achieve what we often see. But we often see them and we say we want to be like them. But if you want to be like them, then you need to have good discipline, good self-discipline, that is, and realize that sometimes it's going to take sacrifice as well. Okay? Know your limits. This is important. This is a personal thing. You need to know your limits. Now, for example, say I'm going to do weight loss, and you haven't been in a gym in a while. Some of you maybe never before. And you say, I just really want to achieve that. And you just say, okay, gosh, he looks so good. But you need to factor in, maybe he's been in a gym for the last 2-3 years, This may be a new process for you. And if you get a trainer, he or she will tell you, you got to first know your limits. And he or she's going to start you right where you are. And I say that whether it's physical, mental, emotionally, professionally, whatever, know not only your limits, but start with right where you are. Progress is looming over the hills, but you got to start with where you are. Know your limits. Identify your stressors, things that didn't work so well in talking about our mental health, things that were stressful for us, and no matter how we tried to wrap it up and put a bow on it, there were stressors in our lives in 2021. Then we're saying identify those stressors, and not only identify them, so then they become like red flags. When you see them from now on, they don't sneak up on you when you can identify them. So therefore, you know how to better handle those stressors if you can just take the time to identify them. And setting realistic goals. This is key. Realistic goals. Because if my goals are trying to mimic someone else's and they're not realistic for me, they're not going to be attainable. So we want goals that are attainable, and I even recommend sometimes starting off small. For someone who has agoraphobia, they just kind of don't like crowds, they don't like being around a lot of people. Saying, "Oh, well, let's go to the mall for Christmas shopping," may be overwhelming. It may be just really overwhelming. And just a quick example: on Black Friday, my wife and I, Tinder, we had our niece with us, who's an adult. She's an adult. And we had actually gone to get something to eat in the food court in the mall, but we kind of just went to the food court. She kept saying, she said it more than once, and I heard her. I really did. She said, "This is just too much. This is just too much." There were just so many people in an area, in a space in the mall, and it was just so crowded, and it made her uncomfortable. So after we quickly ate, we left the mall, we exited the mall. But listening to yourself, and we're talking about, I heard her, but sometimes we have to listen to ourselves, and when we are listening to ourselves, we can then set realistic goals. So what's fair for you is being realistic. Start with where you are. I'll say that again. Start with where you are. Make sure your goals are attainable. If you want to be a millionaire and you say, "I don't have but a couple $1,000s in my banking account starting 2022, then that may not be realistic to say at the end of the year. But you can say at the end of the year, "I want to have saved." Remember, planning is key. "I want to have saved blah, blah, blah amounts of money," and it's doable. But set realistic goals. Taking time for yourself. Take time for yourself. And a lot of times we have goals and we're so goal driven. There are people who are so goal driven that they forget to stop and take time for themselves. It's important taking time for yourself, because if you don't, burnout is so realistic for your situation. You find yourself saying, I'm just overwhelmed, I'm tired, I'm burned out. And then what do? You often just give up on the resolution. So we're saying take time for yourself. You'll hear a little bit more about it, talking about self-care, but take some time just for you as you're going through the process of the change. Don't stop. Just take some time. Take a break. Take some time for yourself. Identify your strengths and weaknesses. We all have strengths and weaknesses. Mine probably aren't yours. Yours probably aren't mine. But we all have strengths and weaknesses. And that's how we can build upon it when we just look at ourselves honestly, right where we are. Like I said, sometimes we want to mimic or mirror someone else. But their strength as individuals, their strengths and weaknesses may differ from ours. But being honest with oneself and say, "Oh, I'm really good in this. I'm good, really, really good with this, but I'm not so good with that." For example, technology. We use it a lot. There are people who are great with technology, who are very, very, very efficient, very quick. They may say, "Okay, I want to, build some type of business that requires me to have strong technological skills or have a career such as that." But if I'm one who's afraid to Zoom, I'm afraid to, really get on my computer, I don't really like, texting or any of those kinds of things, then that may not be the career for me. But looking at my weaknesses, for example, my strength may be, I may not be strong in technological skills, but guess what? I love talking to people. I love working with people. Then you can say, okay, what can I do in order to enhance those strengths that I have? to utilize those strengths. And ask for help when you are overwhelmed. Um, a lot of times we feel like we're in it by ourselves when you start out, and especially if you start with someone and they seem to falter along the way. Ask for help when you're overwhelmed. No man is an island, no man stands alone. We all at some point in our lives need help from someone else. And if you've identified this is my goal, there are all kinds of resources out here to help you achieve that goal, whatever it may be spiritually. Yes, we're coming from a church, so there you may have some spiritual goals. There are spiritual supports out here for you. So when you need help, you have brothers and sisters in Christ who can support you. You have programs, especially in your churches, if you're a part of Word Tabernacle Church, just countless support networks here for you. If you're part of another church, then reach out and find out what those resources are. It may be outside of your church. There are all kinds of groups and support to help you achieve your spiritual goals. And we often, like I said, reflect upon career goals and physical goals. But we also wanted to say, if you're feeling overwhelmed, whatever it be, especially emotionally, there is help. There is help, which is why part of what we do. But there is help for you out here to achieve these goals. It is all doable as you become fit in the new year, because sometimes we just have to be honest with ourselves. In 2021, maybe we were not the best or the most fit person that we could have been. And we say 2022, new year, new me. We're going to do better.
So, as we continue to get fit in the new year, one of the things that we often overlook is the clutter and how that affects us. So, when you look around at your physical environment, if you have a junk drawer, most of us have a junk drawer in our kitchen. But if you have several junk drawers, if your countertops are flooded, if your home office is flooded with books and papers, and you're constantly having to dig out to find something, if your car is messy, all those things will affect your mental state as well. So we say start 2022 with being able to declutter. And once you start to get rid of a lot of the physical stuff that seems to be in your way, then that will in turn help you to clear your mind. And there have been some studies out there of people that suffer from anxiety and depression, and they say they feel a lightness once they can go home and clean their house. So oftentimes you will see people cleaning and getting rid of stuff, because in turn that helps them to clear their minds as well as their thought patterns. If you have a bunch of junk and just negative thoughts from the last year, we want to go ahead and clear that out the way to make room for the new. And a lot of that will start with, I put up here, being able to apologize and forgive. A lot of times we are carrying heavy baggage of guilt and hurt and unforgiveness that's keeping us from moving forward. So as much as possible, we need to try to clean it out. Be the bigger person and forgive. Because once you forgive, it doesn't necessarily mean you condone what maybe the other person had done to you to hurt you. But when you forgive, that releases you to be able to move on. You can say that's a closed chapter. I don't need that chapter still taking up space. I'm ready for some new challenges. So let's try in this new year, end of that old baggage of unforgiveness. Let's start today and let's just forgive so that we can move on.
I wanted
So,
to add about the decluttering because it really, really does. And one say, okay, well, what difference does that make? I just don't feel, well psychologically or emotionally. What difference does it make what my house looks like? And as Ginger was saying, it does have a psychological. It tends to have a psychological effect on you when you're able to see neater, cleaner spaces. And yes, for some of us, it will take us getting to that point where we're able to declutter emotionally and getting rid of some of that stuff before we can do some of that stuff physically because we have sometimes unhealthy attachments to some of the emotions that we have as she said, that baggage, as well as some of the stuff physically to in order to clear it out. But we have to really think about what purpose it serves in our lives currently. And if it really has no purpose, sometimes we just have to make that very difficult decision to say, I'm going to let that go. That's a part of my decluttering process. I'm going to let it go. And letting go can be a challenge sometimes, but once you realize that I'm focused on the big picture, as she said, I have a goal, a New Year's resolution, whatever that goal is, even emotionally, sometimes we really have to have a tough and honest conversation with ourselves and say, you know what, I have been holding on to this and it serves no purpose anymore. That was 30 years ago in my life and it really doesn't, that emotion doesn't even serve a purpose anymore. So like she said, so I can forgive and then move on. It's very freeing, just like a decluttered space. Emotionally, it's very freeing when we let it go.
because most of the time, going back to that unforgiveness and holding on to it, especially if it's a person that is still around, that person has moved on. So you're only holding yourself back. You're not holding the other person back. You're holding yourself back. So it's time for you to let go and free you for the new year. So another way that we can um, get fit in the new year is that physical fitness. And that physical health includes being able to eat well. We are what we eat. If we eat a lot of junk food, sugary foods, candies that are not good for us, then we're not
Salty
going to
foods,
feel
fat
good.
foods.
So, yeah, just, fried this and fried that. It's not good for our bodies health wise. So we need to try to eat more foods that are rich in the omega 3s, such as fish. We need to eat fish. One place I read was you should eat fish 2 to 3 times a week, but certain kinds of fish and not fried fish. We should also be eating nuts, fruits, and vegetables, and to emphasize eating whole foods. Those are foods that have not been processed. You're eating the whole grains. So those are things that are so needed, along with water. Water is the key to our survival. So it's important that you drink lots of water each day, as well as eating nutritious meals, which includes, like I said, a lot of the whole foods. Getting adequate rest. Your body needs 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. And what the sleep does for your body, it is a time that your body is repairing itself from all the wear and tear that we put on our bodies. So if you don't get 7 to 9 hours of sleep. A lot of people say they don't need much sleep, but your body as well as your mind needs time to rest. And that is rest free from noise, from activity. Put your body in a rest mode. And when we don't do this, when we don't give our bodies enough rest, then we tend to start to get sick because our bodies can no longer fight off all the different irritants that are in the air, all the people that we come in contact with that might carry germs, all those things. There are some things that our bodies repairs itself on a nightly basis. So we need to be careful about not getting enough rest. And it's okay to take a 20-minute power nap during the day. I feel like a brand new person when I take my 20-minute power nap during the day because my body needs that little bit of time to shut down and repair. Exercise. Stanley talked about it a little bit. If you haven't been exercising, then it's not a realistic goal to think you're going to be able to run a half marathon in a couple of months. Start with where you are. But the body needs that physical fitness to keep our heart pumping correctly. That physical fitness helps with any of the cholesterol buildup, all those types of things that we take in from not eating a lot of the whole foods. Our bodies can fight them off. And one way we do that is also being able to exercise. So I challenge you to exercise in 2020 because that is one of my goals, is to become more physically fit in 2020 too.
Thank you for watching Counselor's Connection, Real Talk. Tune in next time for part 2 of today's episode.
A mystery. Let's share a mystery. Together we can find the answer. Together